The Keldari war fleet hung in the void like a constellation of death, their sleek vessels gleaming under the distant light of Sol. Admiral Vex stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominator, his forearms crossed as he studied the tactical display. 27 ships, the largest invasion force the Keldari Empire had ever assembled. Sensors show minimal defensive presence, reported Navigation Officer Kren, his voice carrying the typical Keldari confidence. 3 patrol vessels, 2 mining stations, and what appears to be a small orbital platform around the third planet. Vex's mandibles clicked in amusement. The humans had been warned. 3 standard galactic cycles ago, they had been ordered to surrender their system and accept Keldari rule. The response had been disappointing. A simple message: "We respectfully decline." "Sir," Communications Officer Tell interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the human orbital station." On screen, a human appeared on the view screen. Pale skin, brown hair, wearing what looked like a simple blue uniform. The creature looked remarkably calm for someone facing annihilation. "This is Commander Blake of Earth Defense Station Alpha," the human said. "You are in violation of human territorial space. Please withdraw immediately." Vex's laugh was a harsh, chittering sound. "Human, I am Admiral Vex of the Keldari Imperial Fleet. You will surrender unconditionally, or we will take your system by force. Your choice." The human's expression didn't change. "I'm afraid that's not possible, Admiral. You have 10 minutes to begin your withdrawal, or we will be forced to take defensive action." "Defensive action?" Vex's amusement grew. "With 3 patrol boats and a mining platform? Human, we have 27 warships. Each one could destroy your entire defensive fleet." "I understand your position," Blake replied calmly. "But this is human space. We protect what's ours." The transmission ended. Vex turned to his tactical officer. "How long until we reach optimal firing range?" 15 minutes, sir." "Excellent. Signal the fleet. We'll make quick work of this and be home within the cycle." Vex settled into his command chair, already planning the victory celebration. The humans had shown promise in the few skirmishes along the frontier, but they were still young, still learning the harsh realities of galactic politics. As the fleet advanced, Vex noticed something odd. The human patrol vessels weren't fleeing. Instead, they were taking defensive positions around the third planet, Earth. According to their intelligence reports, the mining stations had stopped their operations and were also moving into formation. "Sir," Sensors Officer Wade called out, "I'm detecting energy buildups throughout the system. Multiple sources." "Specify." "Unknown, sir. The readings are strange. I've never seen anything like them." Vex's confidence wavered slightly. In his 30 cycles of military service, he had conquered 17 systems. The pattern was always the same: show overwhelming force, accept surrender, establish control. The humans were following a different script. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission," Tell announced. Blake appeared again, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood dozens of other humans, all wearing the same calm expression, all watching the screen with steady eyes. "Admiral Vex," Blake said, "I need you to understand something about humans. We've been fighting for survival since we first looked up at the stars. We've learned that sometimes, the only way to protect what you love is to be willing to lose everything for it. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. Sarge's Tales Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you." Blake continued, "You see, Admiral, you made one critical error in your intelligence gathering. You counted our ships, you measured our weapons, you calculated our defenses, but you forgot to ask the most important question." "Which is?" Vex found himself asking despite his better judgment. Blake's expression never changed, but something in his eyes grew harder. "You forgot to ask what we're capable of when we're protecting our home." The transmission ended, and the first human ship exploded. The explosion was unlike anything Admiral Vex had ever witnessed. The human patrol vessel didn't simply detonate. It transformed into a sphere of pure energy that expanded rapidly, washing over 2 of his lead destroyers. The Keldari ships simply vanished, their shields and armor meaningless against whatever force had consumed them. "What in the void was that?" Vex demanded, his confidence evaporating. "Unknown, sir." Sensors Officer Wade's voice cracked with panic. "The energy signature is completely alien. It's not antimatter, not plasma, not any weapon type in our databases." The second human patrol vessel was already beginning to glow with the same ominous light. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Vex ordered. "Maximum acceleration, scatter formation." Too late. The second ship erupted in another sphere of annihilation, claiming 3 more Keldari vessels. The third human patrol boat was already building toward its own detonation. "Sir, the surviving ships are reporting massive casualties." Communications Officer Tell announced. "The energy is somehow penetrating our shielding and causing immediate molecular disruption." Vex watched in horror as the third explosion took 2 more ships. In less than 5 minutes, he had lost 7 vessels to 3 small patrol boats. The mathematics of this battle had shifted dramatically. "New contacts," Wade called out. "Multiple ships decloaking throughout the system." The tactical display lit up with new signatures. Dozens of human vessels, each one different from the last. Some appeared to be converted civilian ships. Others looked like hastily assembled platforms bristling with unknown weapons. They emerged from behind asteroids, from the shadows of planets, from positions that should have been impossible to reach, undetected. "How many?" Vex asked, dreading the answer. "Counting, sir, over 60 vessels of various sizes." "Impossible. Our intelligence was incomplete." A new voice interrupted. The view screen activated without authorization, showing a different human. This one was older, gray-haired, wearing a simple jacket that looked like it belonged on a farmer rather than a military commander. "I'm Captain Moore," the human said. "I used to run a cargo hauler before your empire started threatening Earth. Now I command the mining vessel Determination. She's not much to look at, but she's got something your intelligence couldn't account for." "Which is?" Vex found himself compelled to ask. "Human stubbornness," Moore replied with a slight smile. "See, we've been preparing for this day since we first learned about your empire. Every merchant ship, every mining vessel, every transport has been retrofitted. Every human in this system volunteered for this defense." Another human voice joined the transmission. "This is Engineer Lisa Park aboard the research vessel Curiosity. I used to study stellar formation. Now I've figured out how to turn our fusion reactors into weapons that make your plasma cannons look like flashlights." More voices joined in, one after another. A teacher turned gunner. A farmer commanding a converted agricultural transport. Children who had learned to operate defense systems before they could properly walk. Each human telling their story, each one ready to die for their world. "You see, Admiral," Moore continued, "you assumed we would fight like you do. Ship to ship. Formation to formation, following the rules of civilized warfare. But humans don't fight civilized wars when our home is threatened. We fight to win, regardless of cost." The human mining stations were moving now, their massive industrial equipment reconfigured into weapons platforms. Asteroid mining lasers that could carve through solid rock were being turned toward the Keldari fleet. Ore processing facilities had become missile manufacturing plants, churning out projectiles at an impossible rate. "This is madness," Vex whispered. "An entire civilization cannot simply transform into a military force overnight." "You're right," Blake's voice rejoined the conversation. "It can't, but we didn't do it overnight. We've been doing it for generations. Every human child learns to shoot before they learn to drive. Every human settlement has emergency defense protocols. Every human ship can be converted to military use within hours." The tactical display showed the truth of his words. The 60 ships had become 80, then 100. Human vessels were still emerging from hiding places throughout the system, each one adding to the growing defensive fleet. "We tried to warn you, Admiral," Blake continued. "We told you this was human space. We told you we would defend it. But you didn't listen. You counted our ships and thought you understood our strength." Vex looked at his remaining 20 ships, now facing over 100 human vessels of unknown capability. "Our strength isn't in our ships, Admiral. It's in our willingness to sacrifice." The first coordinated human attack came from every direction simultaneously. Vex watched in stunned silence as his tactical display dissolved into chaos. Mining lasers designed to cut through asteroids sliced through Keldari armor like it was paper. Converted cargo haulers launched swarms of improvised missiles, each one a fusion reactor set to overload on impact. Shields at 60% and falling, his tactical officer reported. These weapons are unlike anything in our databases. Return fire, all batteries, Vex ordered. The Dominator's plasma cannons lanced out, striking a converted human freighter. The ship's hull buckled and vented atmosphere, but instead of retreating, it accelerated directly toward the nearest Keldari destroyer. Sir, the damaged human vessel is on a collision course with the Ravager. Order them to evade. Too late. The human freighter, its hull breached and crew likely dead, slammed into the destroyer's engine section. Both ships vanished in a brilliant explosion that sent shockwaves through the surrounding vessels. How? Vex demanded. How did they maintain course with a dead crew? His communications officer's voice was shaky. Sir, I'm detecting automated systems on all human vessels. They're programmed to continue fighting even if the crew is incapacitated. Another human ship, this one a passenger liner converted into a missile platform, was taking concentrated fire from 3 Keldari vessels. Its shields failed, its hull was breached in a dozen places, and its engines were offline. By all tactical reasoning, it should have been a derelict. Instead, it exploded, not from enemy fire, but from internal detonation. Another expanding sphere of energy that consumed 2 more Keldari ships. They're turning their own vessels into weapons, Vex realized with growing horror. Every ship is a potential bomb. Admiral, his sensor officer called out. I'm detecting massive energy buildups on the human orbital stations. They're preparing to fire. The stations around Earth, structures that had appeared to be simple defensive platforms, were revealing their true nature. What looked like communication arrays were actually focusing dishes for energy weapons. What appeared to be docking bays were launching platforms for relativistic kinetic projectiles. Incoming missiles, the tactical officer announced. Velocity. That's impossible. Report. Sir, these projectiles are moving at 97% light speed. Impact in 43 seconds. Vex's blood ran cold. Relativistic weapons were theoretical constructs, too dangerous for any sane species to develop. The energy requirements alone should have been prohibitive. All ships, emergency jump to hyperspace. Sir, we can't. They're jamming our jump drives. The human jamming wasn't sophisticated electronic warfare. It was brute force. Every human ship was broadcasting on hyperspace frequencies, creating so much interference that navigation was impossible. The first relativistic projectile struck the cruiser Conqueror. The ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, along with a spherical section of space around it. The second projectile missed, but passed so close to the Dominator that the gravitational shear nearly tore the ship apart. Sir, we've lost 11 more ships, Tell reported. The humans are coordinating their attacks with impossible precision. Vex looked at the tactical display. His proud fleet of 27 ships was down to 9. The humans had lost dozens of vessels, but more kept appearing. They seemed to have an inexhaustible supply of volunteers willing to die for their cause. This is insane, he muttered. No species fights like this. No species is willing to accept these casualty rates. Sir, incoming transmission from the human. Commander. Blake appeared on screen again, but this time he looked tired. There was smoke in the background, and his uniform was torn. Admiral Vex, Blake said. I'm going to make you an offer. Withdraw now, and we'll let your remaining ships leave. Continue this attack, and none of you will return home. You're bluffing, Vex replied, though his conviction was wavering. You can't sustain these losses. You're throwing away lives for a single system. Blake was quiet for a moment. Admiral, you've been fighting for conquest. We're fighting for survival. There's a difference you don't understand. When you fight for conquest, you calculate acceptable losses. When you fight for survival, loss is unacceptable. Your ships are being destroyed. Your people are dying. Yes, Blake agreed. But our children are still alive. Our world is still free. And every ship you lose is one less that can threaten another human colony. The truth hit Vex like a physical blow. The humans weren't just defending Earth. They were sending a message to the entire galaxy. Any species that threatened humanity would pay a price that made victory meaningless. You're all insane, Vex whispered. Blake's expression softened slightly. No, Admiral. We're just human. The battle had been raging for 3 hours when Admiral Vex realized they were fighting a war of attrition they could not win. His fleet was down to 6 ships, but the humans seemed to have an endless supply of vessels. Every time they destroyed a human ship, 2 more appeared from hidden positions throughout the system. Sir, the humans are changing tactics, his tactical officer reported. They're no longer engaging directly. They're hurting us. Vex studied the tactical display and saw the pattern. The remaining human ships weren't attacking in waves anymore. Instead, they were systematically blocking escape routes, using their superior numbers to control the battlefield's geometry. They're corralling us toward the inner system, he realized. But why? His answer came from an unexpected source. The view screen activated, showing not Blake or Moore, but a young human who couldn't have been more than 20 cycles old. Admiral, Vex, the young human said. My name is Tom Anders. I'm a physics student at Earth University. I was working on my doctoral thesis when your fleet arrived. I don't care about your academic pursuits, human. You should, Tom replied with a slight smile. My thesis was on stellar engineering, specifically, how to turn a star into a weapon. Vex felt his mandibles go slack. That's impossible. No species has that level of technology. You're right. We don't have the technology. Tom's smile widened. We have something better. We have creativity and complete disregard for what's supposed to be impossible. The tactical display suddenly showed new energy readings from Sol itself. The star's output was fluctuating in ways that defied astrophysics. What have you done? Vex demanded. We've been dropping modified fusion reactors into the sun for the past 2 years, Tom explained. Each one is programmed to destabilize specific layers of the solar atmosphere. We can't control the star, but we can make it hiccup. A solar flare? Much more than that. We call it a directed stellar discharge. Think of it as the largest weapon ever created by any species in the galaxy. Vex's sensors officer was frantically working his controls. Sir, I'm detecting massive electromagnetic buildups in the star's corona. The magnetic field lines are realigning, in impossible configurations. How long? Vex asked, though he dreaded the answer. The discharge will reach us in approximately 18 minutes, Tom replied. It's not powerful enough to sterilize the system, but it will disable every electronic system within 10 astronomical units. Your ships will be helpless. As will yours. Yes, Tom agreed. But our ships are expendable. Yours are your only way home. The elegant simplicity of the human strategy became clear. They were willing to sacrifice their entire defensive fleet to strand the Keldari force in the system. Without functional ships, the survivors would die slowly as their life support systems failed. This is barbaric, Vex protested. You're committing suicide to kill us. No, Admiral. We're committing suicide to protect humanity. There's a difference. Blake's voice joined the transmission. Admiral, you still have a choice. We can guide your remaining ships to a safe distance before the discharge. All you have to do is surrender and accept our terms, which are complete withdrawal from human space, a formal treaty recognizing human territorial sovereignty, and most importantly, you return to your empire with a message. What message? Blake's expression grew deadly serious. That humanity is not to be conquered, that we will fight with weapons you've never imagined, tactics you've never encountered, and a determination you've never faced. That attacking one human world means war with all of them. Vex looked at his remaining ships, then at the tactical display showing the growing energy buildup in Sol. His proud fleet had been reduced to 6 vessels by an enemy that should have been easily defeated. The humans had revealed weapons and tactics that challenged everything the Keldari understood about warfare. Sir, his communications officer interrupted, we're receiving emergency transmissions from the other ships. They're requesting permission to surrender. Vex closed his eyes. In 30 cycles of military service, he had never faced an enemy like this. The humans didn't fight for glory or conquest. They fought with the desperate creativity of a species that had learned to survive against impossible odds. Human Blake, he said finally, what are your terms for surrender? Simple. You leave. You never come back. And you tell your empire what you learned here today. Which is? Blake's answer was quiet but carried the weight of absolute conviction. That humans protect their own. Always. No matter the cost. The stellar discharge was building toward critical levels. Vex had minutes to decide between death and humiliation. For the first time in his career. All ships, prepare for emergency withdrawal, Admiral Vex ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. We surrender to human terms. The response from his fleet was immediate relief mixed with confusion. The Dominator's bridge crew looked at their admiral with expressions ranging from gratitude to bewilderment. In Keldari military doctrine, surrender was considered worse than death. But doctrine hadn't prepared them for humanity. Admiral, Blake's voice came through the communication system. We're transmitting safe corridor coordinates to your navigation systems. Follow them exactly, and you'll clear the discharge zone with minutes to spare. Why? Vex asked. Why spare us? We came to conquer your world. Because, Blake replied. Dead messengers can't carry warnings. The human ships began moving with practiced precision, creating a clear path through the system. Their formation was perfect, their timing flawless. Vex realized that even their chaotic battle tactics had been carefully planned. The humans had been controlling the engagement from the beginning. Sir, his navigation officer reported, following the human corridor will take us past their primary orbital stations. We'll be completely vulnerable. Do it anyway, Vex ordered. We have no choice. As the Keldari ships limped toward the system's edge, Vex found himself studying the human stations they passed. What he saw challenged everything he thought he understood about these creatures. The stations weren't just military installations. They were communities. He could see civilian areas, gardens, even what appeared to be schools. They put their families on their defensive platforms, he murmured in disbelief. Sir? His communications officer asked. The humans. They stationed their families on their military installations. They've been fighting this entire battle with their children watching. The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't just been willing to die for their world. They had been willing to let their families die beside them rather than surrender. Admiral, Tom Anders's voice came through the communication system. You're probably wondering why we built our communities into our defenses. The thought had occurred to me. It's simple. We learned long ago that the best way to ensure soldiers fight to their last breath is to make sure they're fighting for something they can see. Every human in this system knew that retreat meant watching their families die. The stellar discharge was building to its climax. Vex could see the massive magnetic field lines realigning, preparing to unleash energy that would cripple anything in its path. The human ships were still maintaining their positions, still guiding the Keldari fleet to safety despite the approaching danger. You're going to die, Vex said to Blake. Your ships won't clear the discharge zone in time. We know, Blake replied calmly. But our families will survive. Earth will survive, and the message will be delivered. This is madness. No, Admiral. This is evolution. Humans have been selected by violence for millions of years. We're the descendants of the survivors, the ones who were willing to fight when fighting seemed hopeless. The Keldari fleet reached the safety threshold just as the stellar discharge erupted. Behind them, the inner system was bathed in electromagnetic radiation that would disable any unshielded technology. The human defensive fleet disappeared from sensors as their ships were fried by the very weapon they had created. But the silence didn't last long. Sir, the sensors officer called out. I'm detecting new contacts in the inner system. The humans are launching fresh ships from shielded positions. Vex stared at the display in amazement. The humans had planned for this. They had backup fleets hidden in electromagnetically shielded facilities, ready to emerge once the discharge passed. They had been prepared to sacrifice their first line of defense as part of a larger strategy. How many? He asked. Initial count. Shows over 200 vessels, sir. They're larger than the first wave, and they appear to be purpose-built warships rather than converted civilian craft. Blake's voice returned to the communications channel, though now it was coming from a different ship. Admiral Vex, as you can see, the defense of Earth is far from over. What you faced today was just our militia, volunteers flying converted civilian ships. You haven't even seen our actual military yet. The truth hit Vex like a physical blow. The devastating battle that had destroyed most of his fleet had been fought by part-time soldiers flying improvised weapons. The real human military was still waiting. "How?" he whispered. "How did you become so effective at warfare?" "We've been at war with something or someone for our entire existence," Blake replied. "First with nature, then with each other, then with the challenges of space itself. War isn't something we do, Admiral. War is what we are." The Keldari fleet limped toward the hyperspace jump point, their sensors still showing the growing human fleet behind them. 200 ships had become 300, then 400. They were emerging from hiding places throughout the system like a nest of awakened predators. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "the humans are requesting a final transmission." Blake appeared on the view screen one last time. Behind him, Vex could see the bridge of a proper warship, sleek, efficient, and intimidating in its quiet confidence. "Admiral Vex, you're going to return to your empire with a story that many will find hard to believe. You're going to tell them that a species barely a century into space travel defeated the Keldari Imperial fleet, using improvised weapons and civilian volunteers. They won't believe it." "Then bring them back to see for themselves," Blake said with a cold smile. "But understand this. Next time, they won't face our militia. They'll face the full strength of human military power. And unlike today's battle, we won't offer surrender terms." The journey back to Keldari space was the longest 18 days of Admiral Vex's career. His surviving ships limped through hyperspace, their crews struggling to repair damage that should have been impossible to inflict. The humans had used weapons that violated fundamental assumptions about physics, tactics that defied military doctrine, and displayed a level of coordination that suggested a hive mind rather than individual consciousness. "Sir." "Communications," Officer Tell reported. "We're receiving priority transmissions from High Command. They're demanding immediate status reports." Vex had been dreading this moment. How could he explain that the mightiest fleet in Keldari history had been defeated by converted cargo haulers and mining vessels? How could he describe an enemy that turned their own sun into a weapon? "Tell High Command we'll deliver our report in person. Full details upon arrival. They're insisting on preliminary intelligence, sir." Vex considered his options. The truth was so unbelievable that sending it through normal channels would likely result in his arrest for cowardice or incompetence. Better to wait until he could present the full tactical data in person. "Tell them the humans were more prepared than our intelligence indicated. We'll provide complete details at the debriefing." The understatement of the century, but it would have to suffice. As the fleet approached Keldari Prime, Vex found himself reviewing the battle recordings for the 100th time. Every analysis reached the same impossible conclusion. The humans had been playing a game 20 moves ahead from the very beginning. Their chaotic tactics had been carefully orchestrated. Their seemingly desperate maneuvers had been part of a larger strategy, and their willingness to sacrifice everything had been genuine. "Sir," Navigation Officer Kren interrupted his thoughts. "We're approaching the capital system. Orders? Take us directly to High Command. Emergency docking procedures." The massive space station that served as the Keldari military headquarters had been built to intimidate. Its weapon arrays could destroy entire fleets. Its sensor networks monitored dozens of star systems, and its strategic importance made it the most heavily defended installation in the Empire. Looking at it now, Vex wondered if it would be enough to stop the humans if they ever decided to take the offensive. Within hours of docking, Vex found himself standing before the Supreme Military Council, 12 of the most powerful Keldari in the Empire, each one a veteran of numerous successful campaigns. They listened in growing disbelief as he recounted the battle. "You're telling us," General Cax said slowly, "that 27 frontline warships were defeated by converted civilian vessels?" "That's correct, sir." "And that the humans turned their own star into a weapon?" "Yes, sir." "And that they were prepared to sacrifice their entire defensive fleet to strand our forces in their system?" "Yes, sir." The silence in the chamber was deafening. General Moore, the eldest member of the council, finally spoke. "Admiral Vex, in 300 years of Keldari expansion, we have conquered 47 star systems. We have faced species with superior technology, greater numbers, and advanced tactical doctrines. We have always prevailed through superior strategy and overwhelming force. Are you seriously suggesting that a single species of primitives has found a way to counter our... Vex activated the holographic display, showing the tactical recordings of the battle. The Council watched in silence, as human ships transformed into weapons, as mining lasers carved through Keldari armor, as the star itself became a battlefield tool. The humans aren't primitives, Vex said quietly. There's something we've never encountered before. They don't fight for conquest or territory or resources. They fight for survival. And that makes them infinitely more dangerous than any enemy we've faced. Explain, General Cax demanded. When we fight, we calculate acceptable losses. We weigh the cost of victory against the value of the prize. The humans don't make those calculations. They fight as if losing means extinction, because for them, it does. Every battle is a fight for their species' survival. General Moore leaned forward. You're suggesting they're irrational? No, sir. I'm suggesting they're evolved. They told me that humans have been at war for their entire existence. First with their environment, then with each other, then with the challenges of space. War isn't something they do. It's what they are. The council members exchanged glances. The implications were staggering. An entire species that had evolved for warfare, that treated every conflict as a fight to the death, that was willing to sacrifice everything for victory. What are your recommendations, Admiral? General Cax asked. Vex had been preparing for this question throughout the journey home. Complete withdrawal from human space, formal recognition of human territorial claims, and most importantly, a standing order that no Keldari vessel is to enter human space without explicit authorization from this council. You're recommending we retreat from a single species? I'm recommending we avoid a war we cannot win, Vex replied. The humans have capabilities we don't understand, tactics we can't counter, and a level of determination we can't match. Attacking them again would be suicide. The debate that followed lasted for hours, but Vex knew the outcome was inevitable. The tactical recordings spoke for themselves. Humanity had announced its presence on the galactic stage in the most definitive way possible. They had won. 6 months after the failed invasion of human space, the galaxy had changed. Word of the Keldari defeat spread through the interstellar community like wildfire, carried by traders, diplomats, and intelligence networks. The reaction was universal disbelief, followed by careful recalculation of political positions. Admiral Vex, now serving as the Keldari Empire's Director of Xenological Threat Assessment, found himself briefing delegation after delegation of species, representatives who wanted to understand what had happened in the Sol system. His office had become a pilgrimage site for military strategists trying to comprehend how a single species had revolutionized warfare. The key, he explained to the latest group of visitors, representatives from the Altarian Confederation, is understanding that humans don't view conflict the way we do. We see war as an extension of politics. They see it as an extension of evolution. The lead Altarian delegate, a tall being with crystalline features, leaned forward. You're suggesting they're naturally superior warriors. I'm suggesting they're naturally superior survivors, Vex corrected. Their entire species has been shaped by constant conflict. They've developed an intuitive understanding of warfare that took us millennia to learn through study and practice. The briefing room's holographic display showed a map of known space, with human territory marked in red. What had once been a small, insignificant region was now surrounded by a buffer zone that no species dared to violate. Have there been any further contacts? Another delegate asked. Several, Vex replied. All peaceful. The humans seem content to remain in their territory as long as no one threatens them. But they've made it clear that any aggression against their colonies will result in consequences. He didn't mention the reports from the frontier regions. Ships that entered human space without permission simply disappeared. Long-range sensors detected massive construction projects in the outer reaches of human territory. Intelligence suggested that humanity was building something unprecedented, a defensive network that spanned multiple star systems. What about their technology? The first delegate pressed. Have they shared any of their innovations? They've been surprisingly generous with certain technologies, Vex admitted. Medical advances, agricultural improvements, even some manufacturing techniques. but their military innovations remained completely classified. The irony wasn't lost on him. The species that had defeated the Keldari Empire through superior warfare was now helping to feed hungry worlds and cure diseases. The humans seemed to understand that their reputation as warriors was enhanced by their actions as healers. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Vex excused himself and activated his private communication terminal. Director Vex, the familiar voice of Blake came through the speaker. I hope you're well, Commander Blake. This is unexpected. I wanted to inform you personally about a decision we've made. Humanity is establishing a new organization, the Terran Defense Initiative. We're offering membership to any species that wants to join a mutual defense pact. Vex felt his mandibles click in surprise. You're expanding beyond your own territory? Not expanding, protecting. We've learned that the galaxy is full of species like yours, ones that view conquest as a legitimate form of diplomacy. The TDI will ensure that smaller, peaceful species don't face the same choice we did. And if they refuse your protection, then they're free to make their own decisions. But, Director, I think you understand what happens to species that threaten TDI members. The threat was delivered in Blake's calm, matter-of-fact tone, but its implications were staggering. Humanity was positioning itself as the galaxy's protector, backed by the military capabilities they had demonstrated against the Keldari. How many species have joined? Vex asked. 17 so far, with more applications arriving daily. It seems that news of our defensive capabilities has spread. Vex thought about the delegations that had been visiting his office, all asking the same questions about human military doctrine. It made sense that smaller species would seek human protection, rather than risk facing human opposition. There's something else, Blake continued. We'd like to extend an invitation to the Keldari Empire. To join your alliance? To establish formal diplomatic relations. We believe that former enemies can become valuable allies if they're willing to change their approach to galactic politics. Vex considered the offer. The Keldari Empire's expansion had been halted by the human victory, but they could still play a significant role in galactic affairs if they chose cooperation over conquest. I'll present your offer to the Supreme Council, he said finally. Excellent. Oh, and Director, you might want to know that we've named our new flagship after you. What? The Admiral Vex. We felt it was appropriate, given that you were the one who helped us demonstrate our capabilities to the galaxy. Your attack on Earth was the beginning of a new era in galactic politics. The communication ended, leaving Vex staring at his reflection in the dark screen. The humans had turned his greatest military failure into a monument to their victory. It was both insulting and oddly respectful. A perfect example of human psychology. He activated his terminal and began composing a message to the Supreme Council. The galaxy had changed, and the Keldari Empire would need to change with it. Humanity had proven that there were worse fates than sharing the